born to a 14-year-old mom. My grandparents kind of stepped in a big way. I did not grow up with a dad. And so my grandfather was kind of that guy. He wasn't trying to be my dad, wasn't trying to replace him, just stepping in to provide support. Literally the earliest story that I can think of that really defined a lot of my confidence was learning to ride a bike, which sounds like, oh, here goes that story. It's a movie scene, but it's like, I'm like 3.5, 4 years old, and he puts me on it. I'm pumped to ride without training wheels. I'm all like bundled up, And as I was going, I hit a very ancient artifact, a payphone, and nailed that thing, bro, and fell down. And I'll just never forget as a 4-year-old, dude. Like I can replay this in my head. But he gets me up, and it was some version of we all fall down. I mean, it's not gonna blow your mind. We all fall down. But he said, if you want to do it again, I will still be here. That moment replayed itself over and over, from him teaching me how to drive, do anything in life. He always supported me without fault. And so this bolstered this confidence in me that I felt like I could lay hold of that, and that failing was a part of the process no matter what.
Here's what I want to start with. Just for context, around who you are. What would you say are the major things that I and the audience need to know to have context around who you are and what you do?
It's great. I think one thing would be to know at least a little bit of like the history. So, I didn't grow up playing music. Grew up a martial artist my whole life. It taught me a lot about the end goal, being an 8-year-old and knowing that I wanted to achieve getting the black belt level and ranking, and then asking what it took to get there. And so at an early age, I was able to kind of piece those dynamics together through that, falling in love with what it looked like to be able to excel in what I did, but to help other people, not cut corners, but to be able to provide wisdom and knowledge on how to be able to be as most effective. So learning to teach and developing that muscle was huge. So I think at the core of me, I'm someone that loves to teach and equip, and to excel at something, to be able to help someone get there further. So then that started translating later in life. When I started playing music, way late, which is, now I've done music longer than I did martial arts, which is crazy. But I think that all of that has translated into what I do today, even just as someone that carries more of like, I never want to sound cheesy, but it's just like, I'm definitely like a messenger first. I think if there was a better way to be able to communicate other than music, I would maybe do that. But music has been something that's been very powerful for me, and useful for me to be able to explain something and get a message across to somebody, to a listener, quicker than any other thing. And then with that, I think that over the years, I turned my love for teaching and equipping through martial arts, and found myself doing that with a guitar from an early age. I mean, at some point, the moment you learn how to play your first chord, you know how to do something better than the person that knows nothing. And so my pursuit after helping somebody be able to get somewhere, it just started resurfacing through music. And so still to this day, actively pursuing my own artistry in music, but also just as much actively trying to build and equip the next person who might feel like they're lesser than, don't believe in themselves, haven't been able to understand something. So those are a few, I think, very big things that make up and have been the most consistent expressions in my life, specifically in music, the last 16 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is how has that played out as far as the teaching and equipping, and how has that played out practically, even in the last couple of years? Or what does that look like practically for you?
Yeah, so I think it started with like very conventional guitar lessons.
Mm.
But what I started realizing was as I was trying to pursue, again, being an artist, whatever that meant,
Mm.
finding areas where I felt like I got taken advantage of, or areas that I just both succeeded and failed at. I started realizing my circle is starting to expand with people who don't just want to learn how to play the guitar, but they desperately want to be able to express themselves.
Mm.
And I don't think I knew how big of a need that was. I don't think I knew how big of a thing that was, because I think when you're focusing on stuff that you're doing, and I'm a person that is way more like, I'm not, what is it, the left brain, right brain, whatever,
Mm.
like I'm not overly creative in that way. I'm way more like type A, entrepreneurial, like I'm gonna figure it out.
Mm.
I love asking questions and being a student. That's one thing that I've never departed from. But I'm like, I just am gonna go figure this thing out. I'm
Yeah.
gonna ask the question. I'm gonna get it done. But then I started seeing people flock around me, and it's been specifically in the last 1 to 2 years where I'm finding people that I'm running with. I've been able to kind of help get under, and it's been more than just guitar lessons. It's kind of become like a holistic version of like artist development.
Mm.
Is the only way that I know how to explain it.
Yeah.
Like, again, if I'm using martial arts as an example, it's not like people are just coming in and learning. I just teach them how to punch. That's
Mm.
like I'm the goal was to be able to create the holistic martial artist inside the karate school and outside of it.
Yeah.
And that was something that was implemented, early on and put in me. And so it's really helping build the confidence of an individual who really does have skill, but they belittle themselves and need that support
Mm.
to be able to continue on. So I just help people not quit.
Mm.
Yeah.
Do you think that primarily came from, your background in martial arts, or do you feel like, there's other pieces of your childhood that you can piece together that are like, oh, I can see glimpses of why I'm that way?
Yeah. My grandfather, big time. Very, like, very long story short, born to a 14-year-old mom. My grandparents kind of stepped in a big way. I did not grow up with a dad. And so my grandfather was kind of that guy, kind of
Mm.
that typical thing where it's like you have a grandfather that steps in. He wasn't trying to be my dad, wasn't trying to replace him, just stepping in to provide support. Literally, the earliest story that I can think of that really defined a lot of my confidence was learning to ride a bike.
Mm.
Which sounds like, oh, here goes that story. It's a movie scene, but it's like I'm like 3.5, 4 years old, and he puts me on it. I'm pumped to ride without training wheels. I'm all like bundled up. And as I was going, I hit a very ancient artifact, a payphone, and nailed that thing, bro, and fell down. And if you don't know what a payphone is, and I'll just never forget. As a 4-year-old dude, like I can replay this in my head. But he gets me up, and it was some version of like we all fall down. I mean, it's not gonna blow your mind. We all fall down. But he said, if you want to do it again, I will still be here.
Mm.
And that moment replayed itself over and over, from him teaching me how to drive stick shift, do anything in life. He always supported me without fault. And so this bolstered this confidence in me that I felt like I could lay hold of that, and that failing was a part of the process no matter what.
Yeah.
It just was what it was. And so again, like that just got embedded into me that early. So then when I turned 8 and started martial arts, like, I mean, I had felt like I'd gone from 4 to 8 and had a lot of experience already at a very early age. of how to feel confident and how to connect to seeing an end result and trying to navigate desire, even though I wouldn't have had language for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy that just the parental influence, and like when you think about, I know for me, because I ask these kind of questions a lot to people, and we all have. When I was 3, this happened, and it either traumatized me or it really, made me who I am in a great way. You know what I mean? And then you become a parent, and you're like, crap.
Right. Right.
How do I not?
Yeah.
How do I make sure that they have those? And obviously, you can't force it, but I mean, when you look at your story, and now being a parent, what are some of the things that you're like, man, me and Sasha really want to like instill this because it's something that's been important to you when you were young, or something that was instilled into you, or like, just from the parent perspective now, like, what is your perspective, on all of that?
Yeah. Me and her grew up completely polar opposite. So that's been a fun thing to try to navigate. I know for me, like, I almost celebrate failure as much as I do success, even already. So, working on potty training, even just something like that, whatever it is, like, I want there to be so much room to just fail and flop, because I remember how big of a deal that was for me. Because when I got old enough to really understand why do I think the way that I think and why do I process the way that I do, it's because it was in tandem with feeling supported while I failed, and that part was celebrated for me. And so I'm sure that there's a lot of things that I could say about what I want to be able to offer my children, and I know some of it will develop and continue to be uncovered, but I'm very passionate about that because of how it affected me. And I think I just would want, right now, my girls to really, really be able to experience when I fail, like, they're still there. And specifically me, like, I would love for them to know. I mean, I want that for their mother too, but I'm just saying, like, my dad's there, like, I didn't disappoint him because I failed. And then I think that gives you,
Yeah.
you know, like, that's what sets people up for that. What is it that was it Edison? Who's just like, I didn't find 1,000 ways to not make a light, or what you know that quote I'm talking
Oh,
about?
about the light bulb.
About the light bulb.
Yeah.
It's like that kind of idea. Like, it's not about, like, I didn't fail 1,000 times. I just figured out 1,000 ways not to do it.
Right.
And for me, that was huge. I mean, even my journey up into becoming a martial artist, like, they put me in everything. And it wasn't that they just let me quit it. I fulfilled the commitment, learned that value. But then when I locked into this, I just never departed from it. And so, yeah, dude, for my girls, I'm just like, let's get out here and just make a freaking mess. Because along the way, I want you to feel confident that you can figure out, like, all of the, because I look at her, and, now, and I'm just like, you could be this, you could be this, just getting excited as a dad. You run so fast. Oh my gosh, we got an Olympian. You jump so high. I'm like, you kick so well. I'm like, oh my gosh. And my world just explodes for possibilities for her. And all I can think is, I just want you to have all of the space in the world to just flop, because you will find the moment that works for you. So, yeah, very passionate.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's really good. Let's talk about Sasha for a minute.
Let's do it.
Obviously she's not here to represent herself. But, for context,
Yep.
you guys have been married a minute.
Yep.
You, for a while, have, written and performed as a couple.
Yep.
Under Marcotte Music.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously are having kids, and so a lot of, that puts a lot on a mom.
Yep.
And so I'm sure that there's been moments where it's had to, a little bit less of that and more of your solo stuff and whatever. But I mean, when you look at like just the fun and the joy of being able to like do that kind of stuff with your wife, what have been some of like your biggest like takeaways and that even the things you're like excited about for the future of like being able to create with your wife.
So some of my favorite takeaways.
Even just thus far.
Yeah. The journey so far, I think, has been. Yeah, I was telling you before this, like, it's been our biggest fight, yet some of our best memories and moments. My favorite one so far, maybe I won't say favorite, but I think a big milestone and something that really tipped us was when we went on our first tour together. Again, my personality is, who told me I have to wait to go on tour? Who told me that I couldn't tour without fans? Who told me that I needed, who's defining this stuff? So I said, well, I've got a 2017 Ford Focus. I've got instruments. I know at least one person in every single state that I can think of. And I said, so I'm gonna start getting on the phone. And so we just, we have a big mirror, and so I got my little trusty Expo marker out, and I said, Sash, like, it was, our first year of marriage, and I just said, there are no rules, so let's go on tour. And so, dude, we planned a 25 city tour on our own, got our own gear. I was a sound engineer every single night, drove everywhere myself. We played the sets, we connected. Our passion is to share moments with real human beings. So it is the songs, but it's just like we don't want to just rack up, Spotify streams and make money that way. We want to share, in the moments. Could be a million years of leading worship and different stuff like that. Maybe that's what does it for me. I don't know. But like both her and I do that. So when I look back at that solidified something very, very profound for us, which just said, who's defining these rules? And as musicians, like, can we take more charge into what we do? And so I think what has then come from that is still a lot of like a lot of hardship, a lot of challenges, a lot of figuring out how to do the marriage thing, now do the parent thing, and have a creative expression together that is also crying, so to speak, for our attention, because no one else is going to care about it. We have to show up for it. So how do we do this? And, if life isn't just about a balance, but more of like a priority list, then how does that work? Because to balance something is to place an equal amount of something on both sides, but that's not how this works. Our duo is not as important as our marriage, and our duo is not as important as our parenting, so it's more of like, how do you prioritize that and still give it what it needs? And so, but I think what it's produced in us is we feel responsible to pursuing it. We've shared too many moments with people and have had too many impactful times to feel like, I'll say it this way. In moments where life feels more demanding, we have struggled with knowing how to give it the priority it needs. And yet we still feel this resolve of like, it's just not over. And this season has been the hardest so far with 2 children, and harder on Sasha. She could speak better about it because she's experiencing what it's like, not just to be a new mom, but a new mom of now 2 babies. And I'll let her speak for herself, but it's been a great challenge, and it's been a challenge for me because I know that it's not the same, but we have to learn to adapt, I guess, the same way that you would with anything else. When it's an individual, it feels a little different. We have to synchronize our lives around nap times, and we have to figure out if we're going to stay up and do this or we're going to fall asleep, or there's just a lot of dynamics. But I think there's some really, really cool takeaways from the last 6 years. So,
I think, so essentially, you guys have started doing a duo year 1 of marriage, and you said it's been 6 years now.
Yeah, we started the duo before we got married.
So now, because of parenting and life, it looks a little bit different in the sense of you're maybe working on, you mentioned some like more solo stuff as Jordan.
Right.
How has that played into, you talked about, and maybe we can even just get into this a little bit, but you talked about how you've been working on something and you're hoping to release it soon, and maybe just give us some insight into what you've been working on. Then maybe we can just jump there.
Yeah, for sure.
Just as far as the context around the project that you're working on currently.
Yep. So it's been, yeah, like I said, I've released a single or two over the year. I mean, my focus has been the duo. That's everything. I've tried to put all the eggs in that basket. When I first started making music, I was known as a worship leader, but loved R&B music. Then started combining them together. And it was like, who's making R&B worship music? Like whatever. So, taking all of my influences 10 years later, it's been 10 years since I released a record called Leaning back in 2013. And so what naturally has happened in the last few months is this desire to like create that again. And genuinely, again, even though it's been hard for Sasha in this season of life, she's been very supportive of this. And I think that I've always like either felt guilty that I can continue to make music when it's a little bit more challenging for her, but I've been very grateful for her support in it because I haven't felt this passionate about something in a while. And again, that I wrestled with that because I'm like, man, am I not passionate about the duo that we've been doing? Am I not this? Am I not that? But this project has been very life-giving for me because I've waited a long time, I think, to even just be able to, I mean, we're sitting in this studio, right? Like I've been so grateful in this season of life to not just have been able to receive this and the support to help build it. My buddy Byron, has been an incredible support to Sasha and I, and to just the endeavors that I've been doing to help build studios like this and to make my own music. I used to really struggle because how many Kickstarters can you do, and now being a producer, I understand why producers charge what they charge, but, I didn't know how to always get that money. And I felt like, how do I get music out if I can only release a song 2-3 times a year? This stuff was very challenging. So I've worked really, really hard to be able to get to a place of being able to support myself to create music. And that's where we are today. So yeah, dude, kind of a hip hop R&B worship, just being very vocal about, it's not even just like, I don't know how to explain it, because I think when people try to categorize the Christian thing, it's like just as much as I talk about songs about my wife and my daughter, is the same way that I just express life trying to follow, a Lord. And so my faith, but like I took a lot of liberty, I think, in this project to talk about very real things, and stuff that I've been going through, I think, just as a man and as a person in the last few years. And so it's been very life-giving to me. A lot of very early mornings, 4:30, 5 a.m., a lot of late nights, dude, up until 1, 2 a.m., just families asleep, and I'm just in here grinding it out. So to me, it's been very, like I said, life-giving. So
I love that. It's actually a great transition into something I actually wanted to talk about anyway, going into it. And again, I didn't give you any context, but I feel like you're in a unique position where, you've done the worship pastor thing, you've done the worship leader thing. You still you're still leading worship on a regular basis, and the faith piece is a really big piece for you. But you also obviously have a desire to make music that ultimately is not Christian, it's not R&B, it's not faith-based, it's just you, right? And it will be all those things because you are all those things, right? But I feel this shift happening within Christian music right now. And I'm just curious what you see, what you're hearing, what you're feeling.
Yeah.
I know you have relationship with people who are also, in that space. And so I feel it though.
Yeah.
Something's happening.
Yeah.
There's a shift coming, I think, that's already started happening. And I'm just curious, like your perspective on where do you see Christian music going?
Yeah.
And even to worship, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a big one to talk through. I think genre is really, really hard because people have created classifications. I was just even having a conversation the other day with someone where I'm like, we're talking about conventional stuff even in church, and I'm like, you do realize that 50 years ago, like people thought the electric guitar was the devil in church, and
Right.
like this stuff is so silly, but this expression is actually the new kid on the block, and we've had to call something. So everyone's always trying to define something. The reason, and again, I'm out here trying not to sound cheesy about stuff, but being a biracial kid, you realize that like I've spent my whole life, and we don't have to go down this tangent, but I spent the majority of my life trying to navigate how not to choose a side because I was just as much one as the other. Right. So black friends thinking, dog, you are to this. White friends thinking, dude, you are to this. I mean, I'm like, this is crazy. Like I just am me.
Yeah.
So when it came to music and when it came to faith, I'm like, why do you care that much? That I'm a Christian. Hey, you skip the song. Because the next joint is a love song to my wife.
Right.
You like that one, but you realize that my messaging is the same. So when it comes to the holistic view of like worship music, especially someone, again, like you said, I have not stopped actively leading Sunday morning or parachurch organization worship, being a part of IHOP and YWAM and local church for 16 years. I mean, I've done it straight.
Yeah.
While maintaining a pursuit of wondering, why did God ask me to do music, bro? When I was 17, I let go of karate to pick up music. And I'm thinking, I mean, no disrespect by this, but I was like, don't you have enough Chris Tomlins in the world? Like, don't you just have enough people who want to I'm flipping 12 feet in the air. Let's just do karate for Jesus. I like that way more than playing this piano because I don't know how to sing and I don't know how to play. But there was a lot of grace to be able to pursue that. And so when I look all these years later, I agree with you where I don't fully know how to put my finger on it. And this is going to sound, I don't know how this is going to sound, but I think it genuinely is people like me. There's a lot of us, but I think it's people like me who I'm not chasing a placement. I'm not chasing. It's fine if you are. It's fine if you're a part of something. It's fine if you're a part of a label. I have so many friends, bro, who are big time in it. I love that for you. Like that's not even what I'm talking about. I just am at a place where, because of how I want to express, I'm not trying to release this under Christian banner, but it's not because I'm afraid to be a Christian. It's just because this is actually for anyone if you want to listen to it. I think the position that a lot of people are trying to take, because people have been trying to apologize so much for wanting to make all kinds of music, that it's like, it was hard for people to see me start making other music because they only knew me for one thing. But I'm very passionate about, hey, like, you don't know what I'm called to do. I had 3 things when I prayed about it that were very clear to me. God, what you want me to do with this? He's like, I want you to adore me with it. What's that mean? Well, you were the kid who couldn't sing, couldn't play. I just want you to always still remember that before anyone hit the link, the .com, added you, paid for you to come out to a thing, I loved listening to you when you sounded awful. So just keep doing that. Like, keep that heart posture alive in this room when you're not recording and no one's around. I said, okay, I want you to reach the lost and I want you to encourage the church. And I said, done. So when it comes to what I do with my wife, it is just as much holy as it is when I write a corporate worship song. I've had very real conversations with people just like, why do you do that has nothing to do with anything. And I'm just like, you're missing the whole point. You know how much, how high the divorce rate is. Do you know how many marriages are struggling? Do you know, I'm not saying that me and Sasha even have it all together. We're just partnering with God to try to process love in all its shapes and forms, the full spectrum of it, out loud through music, to encourage people to understand what love is and what covenant is and what hardship is and what the process is. And so I'm very committed to processing the process because life is hard. A lot of this record that anyone will, when you listen to it, you're going to feel a lot of pain, but you're going to listen to a dude who erupted through a lot of that pain, and see just a God who's faithful. I'm not trying. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm not trying to get in a room and write a Christian song.
Yep.
I am one. And I have a real relationship with the God. So what I think we're going to see is a lot of people who start to maybe throw away a little bit of the classifications, even though they're going to try to be thrown on them. And a lot of it, for what it's worth, is because of money and status. And there's just going to be people who follow Jesus who just go, the music I make, even people who don't outwardly put Jesus in a song. I just think you're going to start seeing people who maybe just want to be as genuinely as honest and as vulnerable as they possibly can. Because sometimes with Christian songs, even though we do know the answer and the end of the story, some of it's just to this. And we don't have a lot of people who are genuinely processing. When we read in scripture, we're seeing a lot of the in-between.
Yeah.
We're hearing about a lot of pain. We're hearing about a lot of screw ups. And I'm very committed to that process. And again, I just want to share messages. So if it's about time is going too fast with my kids, you're going to probably hear that song. If it's about, devotion to my wife, you're going to hear that. But I think industry is a very aggressive thing. But I think that some of the changes might come from dudes like me who just don't care. And I don't know how that changes if eyes get on it, people enjoy it. But I've stopped trying to write according to those guidelines or to the hopes of this being like something.
Yeah.
And just trying to be authentic. And that I thought that I've always been able to maintain that until I started making this record and ran into a lot of insecurities that I had to push through. So that's not a super clear answer to that because I don't know if there is one. And other people might have other insights who are in the industry and in a very deep way. But even with genuinely the big ends that I have, I've avoided going there because I just don't care to know everything that's going on. I just want to be really present right now with maybe showcasing and just being a small drop in that bucket of people maybe that are trying to muster up some confidence to make music that they just care about, and it's not really about anything else as believers. So
yeah, I think it's a huge piece. And what I think is interesting is you're seeing really big CCLI artists, right? People who have, songs who are playing on K-Love and playing, within the Christian, music industry, who are even starting to do some of that kind of stuff.
For sure.
Even we were talking about Corey earlier, but Corey's a great example of
excellent what he's doing right now.
Recently, writing songs that aren't necessarily corporate worship songs. They're just
Correct.
like the most recent song, These Are the Days, I think, just writing about his kids and and it's still impacting people emotionally. It's still speaking to people, even though it's not necessarily, and it's still glorifying God because it's unto God, even though it's not necessarily, talking about God directly. You know what I mean? And so,
because even songs like Kind, it takes me back to the ongoing conversation, even with songs like How He Loves Us. Everyone's so quick to classify something. John Mark McMillan, that was tragic what happened to his friend. He wrote that song in response to that. And let the writer be the writer. But it wasn't his, like, it's not like he was trying to make
Yeah.
a corporate worship song that everyone needed to fight about a lyric over. You see what I'm saying? And that's just what we are so quick to do in the Christian industry, is we have to define it real quick.
Yeah.
And the moment it gets sung from a corporate stage where we're trying to unify an expression with people, we lose what's there. Because I would listen to Even Kind if I did not know Corey. I just go, that is a song. He's not even trying to write a corporate worship song. Clearly, he's not trying. He's just he's someone who follows God. And through all of this stuff, he just goes, hey, the God I know is this. The same way he goes, these are the days that we'll want back.
Yep.
Like, and
Yep.
it's just that. So that's a wonderful example of what we're seeing, is people beginning to tap into, I don't have to fit an expectation that's been put on me. He's a great example of what's going on. I love that you mentioned him. Yeah. So that's perfect.
You're looking at, with this most recent project, you said your goal is this fall. I'm curious to know, like, for the person who's, not where you are, doesn't have the experience you've had, but is wanting to put out music, right? Like they're maybe they're new to songwriting, maybe they're new to producing, maybe they've done one or the other, but haven't really had to do all of it for themselves or whatever, but they're wanting to put something out. What would you say to just encourage the person who, again, isn't where you are yet, maybe just a few years behind you, encourage them to put more stuff out, encourage them to just, if you're going to come under someone, even just like for the person who's listening right now, who wants to be there eventually, how would you encourage them? What would be the things, if you were sitting across from me, across from them at coffee, like we are now, and you're, encouraging them, what would you be telling them?
Yeah. The first thing I would probably say is there's more in your control than isn't. And I think that was always a lie for me. Now, again, the advancements over the years of home studio, the fact that I built my first home studio for like nothing. I did a thing where I found like a home studio for like $150 on Facebook Marketplace. I'm like, the cost of entry is significantly less and way more accessible. But then, as much as I would say that, I would say there's more in your control to do today. And it would be hard for me to look across from someone now. Well, I do this every week. Look across at people and say, get your phone out and just start. That's something that I regret not doing more, even before it felt like it was super prominent of a thing, when really we were posting on Facebook and all this stuff, and people were putting covers and stuff on YouTube. But the reality is I used to have so much pride around it. I wanted it all to be my original music. I want, versus just the way I do How Great Is Our God is different than any other person that does it, and so the best time to start is today. So I just think that like, and not everyone wants to be a producer.
Yeah.
I don't even really want to be a producer. I just don't want to. I got more time than money. Noah, you feel me? Like,
Yep.
That's my motto. Even if I have more money, I've got more time than money. And that used to be a thing that my mom would say with driving the car. Hey, don't get pulled over. You got more time than money. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can get to where you're getting to, but you're not trying to pay that ticket. And so later on in life, I was like, dog, I got way more time than money. And so I had people, bro, from the early days of 15 years ago, of a dude telling me, bro, you can't sing at all the way up to people like, well, maybe you're not a producer, just be an artist. And I'm just like, you have no idea how that fuels me. I would consider myself a new producer, but I don't care, bro. I'm in here making records for me and for other people. And so I would tell someone, start today, get your phone out, record crap. Just start playing music. Because at the end of the day, building, that's what happened at the House of Prayer, and I didn't know it was happening. Because we were live streamed, every single week people would watch me. every single week. And it started opening, and I wasn't trying for that. I wasn't trying for anything. I was just being faithful to the thing that was in front of me. And so what I tell people all the time is say yes to everything. There's going to be a season of your life where the demand is different. And right now, just say yes to everything, everything. I don't care what it is. I played weddings, Noah. I played funerals. I got flown out where this dude's intention was to have me marry his daughter. And I didn't know it till I got there. Dude, I've had the craziest stuff happen. And it's all added up to being in this room today and being like, I can make a song right now, 100% by myself, and feel just as confident releasing it as I did any of the music that was done before by people who are far greater than me. And so I just think that like there is so much more that we can take control of as artists than what is ever. I mean, people would be so mad from back in the day when they just slaved over getting just some studio time. And now they're like, hold on, studio time I got studio time whenever I want it.
Yep.
But anyone, I genuinely believe that anyone can do that if they've set their sights on it and can learn it. So you got to pick something that's ahead of you to pursue every day. But then you got to look at the thing that can be done today. And if I was looking at myself even 10 years ago, today, Jordan, you can play a guitar and you can sing and you have an iPhone. Start right now. It costs you $0 to post videos on YouTube and all of that stuff. And so everyone's goals are different. Some people don't want to play live, blah, blah, blah. But those are fundamental things. Say yes to everything. Have something ahead of you that you're working on every single day. And then the thing that you can do today, start doing it. Because you'll look back in 5 years and you'll be like, now I'm producing songs. And oh, by the way, I have a 300 video catalog of everything that I've done. And now people want to give you money. You haven't even put out an album yet. And now you're selling out tours because people fell in love with you on the internet.
Yep.
Oh, $0. Let the algorithm work for you and just do it. That's free.
Yeah, it's free. And that's changed even so much since when you first started.
It has.
Like
Absolutely.
There's so much more opportunity. And what's funny is like all the time I hear people talking like, it's not even just music, just anything creatively you want to do. Not even just creatively. Like there's moms just making money selling digital products on how to raise 2 kids. You know what I mean? Like it's not like, it's not like it's
endless.
There's the opportunities, unbelievable.
Yes.
And I think people get so, especially creatives, get so caught up on, just the concept of, there seems to be like this downer personality, this downer kind of like, there's no room for me. There's no, it's not enough, whatever. It's too saturated. And it's like, bro,
It's all a lie.
it's just not true.
It's not true.
And I think, what the next generation and a big reason, why I feel like the purpose that even the podcast serves and being able to talk to people like you who can encourage the next generation of like, you have no idea the opportunity you have in front of you. And then I think the other piece too, that's really interesting is like, when we're young, I remember being in high school and thinking like high school was it.
For sure.
You know that feeling?
I do.
Of like being young and like that's it. And when I think about back in, in those days when I would hear, people talk about, there's so much time and you're so young and there's so much opportunity ahead of you and so I understand like why the generation can feel, I empathize with why they could feel that way because I remember not even being able to think outside of high school. Like perspective wise, not even being able to process like what anything could look like 10 years from then, And I just think it's like, I think they need to be encouraged that like, yes, there's lots of opportunity, but also like you have to play the long game.
Yep.
And it's hard to see the long game when you're young because the long game seems 2 years away.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
The long game is when I graduate as a senior and then figure out what college is. Maybe that's what the long game is. But truthfully, the long game is like, if you did this thing for 30 years, you'd probably be a pro at it.
Yep.
But most people don't do that.
Correct.
So I think that's the other piece to even just add to what you're saying. And if you have anything to speak on that, for sure. But definitely like just the concept of like, I think people just don't do it for long enough to actually even see if it's worth something that they should continue doing. I feel like we have this like short game mentality where it's like, oh, I'll try something, and I'm guilty of this. I've done things where I'll try something new, do it for 6 months, didn't see any payoff or reward, and so I'll move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
But how do you be okay with that process?
Yeah.
And not even feeling guilty about it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it takes me back to my karate days because, so for instance, a good example is to get a black belt at that time. Okay, you start as a white belt. You got 7 belts up until, in my style, until you can reach your black belt. You get 6 tips on a belt. You test for a tip 1 every month. Every 6 months, you test for a belt. So this is going to naturally take you 4 or 5 years based on just what that looks like.
Yeah.
But then when you become a black belt, it's a new beginning because in our style, again, there are 9 black belts. But to test for the second one, for instance, was a test of time, not of requirement. So it's different. Where I learned everything to test for my 2nd degree black belt in 6 months, but you had to wait 2 years to do it. You just had to learn the importance of some things are literally time under tension. That's all it is. And this generation, like, I think that there's still a little bit of, I think it's a little different because of how fast things are. And back then there was no like viral, things just didn't work like that. We didn't really know that. We actually had to wait every week for the next episode. All 10 didn't drop at once. Like, this generation really is. The fastest thing we had was a microwave. I mean, that was it. So 100% agree. Because that's even crazy for me. Like, I think I am the most productive, capable now at 33 than I was ever when I thought I was supposed to have cracked the code 10 years ago. And some people do. But the reality is like, that's a good sign. Because now, to be honest with you, it gets me pumped for where am I going to be at 43?
Yep.
Because now where I thought 33 would feel ancient, I feel like I'm in my prime.
Absolutely.
And I am so about the long game, dude. Like, I love that you brought that up because to stick something out long enough and to have that. But again, bro, like sometimes I don't think about it because that's how my brain thinks. And I just go, surely you understand because you've been in martial arts too and you know how to, reach for and I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But, there's people that are like, I tried like 3 videos. I posted. I'm like, what? Like I love on YouTube, Mr. Beast. He's like, hey, your first videos are going to suck. He goes, improve 1% on every single video. Get to 100, then we'll talk. And that's a young cat who knows the long game.
Yep.
Yeah. And so we don't got to go down that tangent, but that's like a huge thing. It's like, no, like even we were talking about with this podcast.
Yeah.
You're like, dude, I'm in this I'm trying to get to 250. Like I'm trying to get to episode 250. And like you are way away from that, but you are exactly en route to get there.
Yep.
Busting through stats, all of that kind of stuff. And that is really, really cool to hear for anyone that is involved in creativity and wants to have something meaningful. Even us as artists, we have to go through life and we have to like let this stuff steep long enough. And that's what I realized about this record is I had to go through the stuff that I've gone through. And I know that is just like so duh.
Yeah.
But genuinely, like a decade of not releasing anything like this, to have gone through something, I'm not trying to just write something I think I know about God or about life, what I've experienced. I'm like, I'm drenching this thing in, hey, I don't know what it's going to be like another 10 years from now, but at least what I know the last decade from 23 to 33, which has been a blink, this is what I've found to be true.
Yeah.
So, yeah, dude, the long game. That's good.
Yeah, it's when I think about our kids, and like the world that they're gonna grow up in, and I don't know, I don't even have a point here, but I think just in pondering, like recently I've been thinking a lot about like what's it gonna look like for them, like when they're in high school, which still is like 12 years away, which seems long, but it's not. It's going to come super fast.
Yeah.
Actually, here's a good example. I was just looking at. It's like 0 to 20 feels super slow, but like everything after that, it feels super fast, and everything after that's like super slow. So like for example, I was looking at my high school posted a picture of like the staff. And I'm looking at like all my old teachers from like over a decade ago, and I'm like, they look exactly the same. And I don't know why I was expecting them to look different.
Yeah.
But I feel like that it's until you, and I haven't even crossed over to 30 yet. I'm getting close. But I feel like there's just a different level of perspective in life that you just don't have until you start getting close to that 30, range. Where it's like there's another, and I feel like I'm personally, like I'll be 28 next month, and I feel like the last year I've learned more about myself than I did in the other 26 years, and I don't know what that is, and maybe even as being someone who's just like 3, 4, 4 or 5 years ahead of me, you're definitely like have crossed over 30 and now have been able to process that a little bit more, but it just feels like there's so much pressure on high schoolers and middle schoolers with social media to like have it figured out even sooner than we felt pressure to have it figured out.
Yes.
And I'm like, I don't even feel like I could even process what it even looks like to have things figured out until the next year or two. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like I can't imagine, and I guess it kind of ties into like it kind of honestly makes me a little anxious about my own kids.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, what's going to be the expectation on them, and how do we ensure that they don't feel that at home, or that what can we do to counteract that? What can we do to, obviously parenting, there's only so much you can do, but I don't know. That's not even a question. That's just something I've just been thinking about.
That's really good. Yeah.
And, I don't know. You're 5 years ahead. 5 years ahead. What would you even say to me as someone who's 5 years ahead? Obviously, kids age you, so our kids are pretty close in age.
Yeah, for sure.
So I probably act like I'm 35, even though
You definitely don't. Would you say you're turning 27?
I'll be 28.
Or you're turning 28?
Yeah, next month.
I thought you were older.
Yeah, I think typically, I think it's the beard.
Maybe.
I think if I shaved it, I look like I'm 22.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like even in the self-discovery, and if there's anything that I even feel like kind of on mission to really like share with the younger generations, is just to wipe off the pressure. And it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
But if we can play a small role in from experience being able to, explain how to do that, and just release the pressure of like, you don't have to be something by 15.
Yeah.
You're probably, the truth is you're not going to be anything till 40, and that's okay. Like almost like
Yes.
like being okay with like, not lower your expectations, because you don't want to,
Right.
you still want to like dream big and,
Yeah.
and whatever. And yes, there are kids who by 21 have started $1 million companies. Like, it's,
For sure.
of course the opportunity is there, but I think if you would talk to them, they're at a very high level of maturity, especially the self-made ones, to where it's like they're just at a different level, and it's not the majority. It's the very small minority, the top, 0.5%.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I worry a little bit for my kids.
Yes.
And I don't think I've started to process that until even the last 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. Because even in that light, like we see people who have hit those massive milestones of succession early on, and we don't often get to see or pay attention to the story 10 years later, 15 years later. Not that I wish the worst, or not that I hope that anything happens. It's just more like, it reminds me of even like young stars or whatever. Life has a way of broadening your shoulders, of showing you, um, it's not like how to lift more weight, it's how to lift the right weight.
Mm.
Uh, and I think like crossing into 30s was that way. I think a lot of people talk naturally about what it does to the mind,
Mm.
how it helps cast off anxiety. There's people that go into the science of it. I'm not there. I can just tell you um, that you've already nailed it with the pressure thing is outrageous.
Mm.
20s are for just absolutely flopping all over. I mean, I think your whole life is for flopping all over the place. I've already said this, but like who in the world is trying, like Noah, I am so glad that I did not make it
Yeah.
when I thought that I should have
Yeah.
and when I wanted it.
Mm.
And I can take you back, man, to show you so many heights that I fell from that taught me like how to carry myself, how to pay attention, how to invest my time. Like there's just so many things that have led me to here where I just go, whether it's the wealth of people that I've built with,
Yeah.
that's taken time, like I want to be able to leave my children a lot of stuff. But dude, if I got hit by a bus today, I was having a conversation with someone about this, where they're just really heavy on like the financial side. I'm like, no, I want to leave my kids something even more than an insurance policy. But like, I also don't want to get hit by a bus and have never spent enough time
Mm.
cultivating the village that will take care of my children when 100 grand disappears.
Yep.
When right now they don't even care about that. And maybe they
Mm-hmm.
will one day,
Mm.
but they're not alone. Like there's things that matter more.
Mm-hmm.
And the wealth of relationship and all of that stuff will far outlast anything else
Yeah.
because it's paid for with time.
Mm.
And we all get 168 every single week,
Mm-hmm.
and we get to choose how to divvy that up. Some things are more demanding. We have children,
Mm.
but it's not even that it's that demanding. It's that we have set value
Yep.
on we will be husbands and fathers that will commit the time. So we cash that in. They're not demanding it from us.
Mm.
We are choosing to invest that money. But that's that time. But that's the same dynamic that I think as I entered into my 30s, and I mean I turned 34 in a month and a half. So it's like I'm really I'm about to be in my mid 30s, bro. Like nothing has felt older.
Mm.
And yet life has slowed down. And priorities
Yeah.
have been instated, and other things are demanding my time that I get to participate with. And, even just like this studio, like I know it's right here, but learning how to say no, how to put parameters, those are all things that I think time and maturity like give you the opportunity for. And again, children do grow you, I think, like
Yeah.
way more, but like, yeah, dude, like casting the pressure off when it comes to life and creativity. We're talking to creatives specifically, and casting that off where when your life begins to change in any season, in any way, whether you get married, you have children, you change jobs, you change locations, you whatever it is, that you'll find the things that matter the most.
Mm.
You'll start to look in 2 weeks and wonder who reaches out to me if they don't hear from me. Those are the things that start to matter.
Mm.
Who are my people? And who's taking care of my family if I cease
Mm-hmm.
the next day? That really matters.
Mm.
So on to that, and just to add to that, yeah,
It's good.
yeah, dude.
Well, to kind of come to some sort of conclusion, um, what do you want people to know? So obviously you're working on the album,
Yep.
the record,
Yep.
hopefully with the release in the fall. Is there anything else you're working on that you just want people to be aware of? Whether it's projects, whether it's life stuff, whether it's anything. Is there just anything you would want to make people aware of?
Yeah.
Um,
About 7 months ago, we talked about this, started getting more and more interested in YouTube. Started a YouTube channel called Don't Quit Music, geared to help, support and sustain the artist and musician, for a lifetime. I think there's a lot of pressure and stigma around what success in music is supposed to mean. There are people who need it to be hobbies. They don't need it to make money.
Yeah.
There's a lawyer out there that needs music to be life-giving. They're not looking for, and then there's people who desire music to be a living, and they want to, so I think the biggest project outside of this, and obviously my wife and I are still playing, so people can hang out there and see what's up. But yeah, the Don't Quit Music YouTube, post second baby here in the midst of finishing up this record. That's going to take a big bit of my time and priority, desiring to build that out. And from the place of a lot of what we talked about today, just processing the process.
Yeah.
And one, committing to share what I feel like I have to share through my journey, and both practical things and mindset stuff. But really desire for people to not quit prematurely when they deserve to stick it out for the long haul, and not just for them, but for people who might really need what they're creating, or really do need the craft itself to be life-giving and to build community around that.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah.
I love that, man. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome.
Thanks for letting me come in your new studio space.
Yeah.
I know this is something you finished up pretty recently, and I know you're stoked about it. So, thanks for inviting me in and just your time to talk and share. And I'm excited just for the next, even for you, the next decade.
Yeah.
40, 43, 44, like what things will look like.
For sure.
The lives you'll have impacted, the music you'll have created, the kids you'll have raised,
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to know you.
Likewise.
So thanks for your time, and we will, maybe we'll do it again in 5 years and do a check-in.
Sounds good.
Sweet, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.